What's up, guys? Cameron here from Drums and Drams, and today is the final video in my top 5 whiskeys of 2023 countdown, which means it's the big day. I'm going to reveal my favorite whiskey of 2023. If you followed along up to this point, I want to say thank you. The channel has gotten so many views and subscribers from this new series, and it's just been really cool to see that growth. And of course, if you enjoy what you're seeing, if you're a new viewer or even somebody that's been coming back for months or even years, the best way you can support Drums and Drams is on the Patreon page. There's a link to that in the description below. And if you want to watch all of these videos, these top 5 reveals one at a time in order, stop the video now. Also, check out the description below. You will see links to 5, 4, 3, and 2, so you can watch these all in order, because today there will be spoilers as we discuss things, kind of recapping all of those other videos towards the end of this. But the first thing that we need to do is nose and taste the winning whiskey of 2023. My winning whiskey, nobody else's. Probably, actually, nobody else's if you look around at other lists. And that's okay. And this brings me to, kind of the biggest point at the beginning of this video before we get into the nosing and tasting, which is just to say, this is my top 5. Take it with a grain of salt. I'm not a critic. I'm a YouTuber that loves to drink whiskey and nerd out about it with his friends. So this is just my list of my top 5 through a very kind of disorganized process that I went through to arrive to these final bottles. So with that said, with that kind of disclaimer out of the way, let's get on to it now. We're going to pull this whiskey out, and the minute you see it, you probably have an idea of where it might come from. So again, going to nose it, taste it, give you a couple of notes, do the reveal, talk about some things at the end, wrap this series up, and say thank you one more time to you guys. Cheers. Let's check out the winning whiskey of 2023 on the nose. All right, so this hits everything on the nose. This checks all the boxes for me. When I'm talking about my criteria for a wonderful whiskey, I'm talking about a bottle that I pick up and cannot put down. I'm talking about uber concentration of flavor. I'm talking about, a flavor profile that I enjoy, and I'm also talking about a whiskey that fits within its context and maximizes it. And this thing checks all those boxes. So on the nose, it's a humongous experience. Jumps out of the glass, and it's a very, very dark profile overall. There's a mix of very sweet, very savory, big fruity kinds of notes, spicy as well. So it's hitting on a lot of different things. That's kind of the first impression on the nose. Yeah, so to be more specific about this, let's start off by talking about some of the more savory notes in here. This reminds me of like country ham. It reminds me of breakfast, bacon, ham. There's a little bit of this meatiness, this what people refer to as umami character going on in the glass. And when you look at the color of this whiskey, it's only to be expected that you're going to have some pretty intense flavor notes like that. Now, on the fruity side of things, this whiskey is all dark fruit, but there's also kind of a backbone of orange in here, almost like an orange tea backbone, which I've discussed on other whiskeys before. But on this particular bourbon, so I'm going to give that away, it's a really dark orange note, this orange tea kind of thing, and dark fruit syrup. There's no better way to put it. It's not a candy fruit syrup. It's truly like a condensed, I've seen a tasting note before that Nancy Fraley has written for Magnus Cigar Blend. She talks about dates in syrup. That's where this is going. Very dark, very rich, concentrated, almost bitter in the way that those fruit notes are just so concentrated, but it's like a bittersweet, balanced kind of experience. So I know a lot to say about this thing. One more nosing, and then we'll get it on the palate. Yeah, gosh. Now let's go to more traditional, like caramelized bourbon notes. This is Werther's Original Candies, big toffee, big butterscotch, caramel syrup. That's where we're at. What else we have? Dark chocolate going on in the glass. And then a note that I pick up on Jack Daniel's Coy Hill, which is a fudge brownie that's on fire. So we're covering all the bases. I could go on and on about this. There's so much going on the nose. We're not here to smell this thing. We're here to taste it. Cheers. Wow. It has that Coy Hill experience on the palate, where it just takes over immediately. It coats the whole palate. It's just feels like oil You know, the way that it's just kind of dripping down your cheeks, just ridiculous drinking experience. And, you know, first sip on this particular bourbon is just for you to, it's just for you to prepare yourself. The first sip is the preparation for the second sip. The first sip is not to dissect the whiskey, and sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. In this case, it's because there's so much flavor, so many layers to it. So high on the complexity scale, high on the flavor concentration scale, very layered, but also extremely integrated. When you're smelling and tasting this bourbon, it's hard to pick out individual flavor notes as opposed to just kind of getting an overall experience of fruit, of sweet, of savory, of spicy. To dissect it is tough because it is so well integrated, and that's something that I really appreciate about this pour. One more time on the palate. Oh my gosh. Wow. It's just amazing. It reminds me of where I grew up in southeastern Ohio, of the way that my grandma used to cook. It reminds me of eating egg sandwiches in the morning, the ham that she would make, the baked beans she would make, the really sweet baked beans. My grandma made really sweet baked beans. She still does. Amazing. So this whiskey is nostalgic for me. Yes, it does all the things for my nerdiness, and I love that about it, but it has the nostalgia. It reminds me of just the outdoors. It reminds me of the place that it comes from, which is not a place that I've ever been, but the idea of it in my head, placing it in that context, makes a lot of sense to me. So let's do the reveal. You probably can guess what this is. So I'm gonna grab the bottle right now. First place with the beautiful homemade medallion that my wife Sarah made. Number one, what's it say on the other side? 2023. Number one of 2023 is from 13th Colony. And a lot of people are talking about 13th Colony right now. This is not actually the 13th Colony Double Oaked. This has the exact same stats, though, which is crazy. I do have the Double Oaked over here as well. May as well pull it out. So my Double Oaked is running low. This has the same stats. 10 years old, 136.8 proof, but it's a single barrel pick from the Bourbon Junkies. And I know that's one of those things I'm going to say. I'm going to get probably some opinions in the comment section because I've already included a Bourbon Junkie single barrel pick in this lineup. But I think we're going to talk about it here in just a second. But at the end of the day, I chose this bottle over the Double Oaked because I felt like this was a more true to bourbon experience, whereas the Double Oaked is so blown out of proportion with the extra oak. And yes, there is even more flavor in it, but I don't necessarily think it works in a balanced way. I think it's just kind of, you turn the amp up to 11, you just go overboard with what the whiskey can be. That's cool. It's like a very novel pour, and I love it. And it really is the most decadent nightcap, like they say on the label. But for me, I find that this pick, which is the exact same thing, stats-wise, it just doesn't have that double oaking going on. I find that this Bourbon Junkies 10-year pick, for me, is more balanced and feels more realistic, let's say. Now, look, the elephant in the room is going to be this, that there's a lot of chatter online right now about 13th Colony. Are they adding things to their whiskey? Is there coloring, flavoring? I don't know. Is it crazy to me that the color's this dark? Absolutely. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, there was some article kind of written about this with a lot of assumptions made and a lot of opinions. I think asking questions is good, but I also think innocent until proven guilty is also good. So I like to stand by that. In this case, yes, there are some peculiar things. The word straight is not on the label of this presumably single barrel bourbon pick that is not double oaked. We're missing straight on the label. We have crazy dark colors. They call it Southern bourbon whiskey. I don't know what's going on with that, but it's not the first time this kind of thing has happened in the market, but it is the first time that I think we're hearing as much talk about it, maybe. And I think that's probably just because the brand is getting so much attention. I don't care about that right now. I'm here to talk about what was the best thing I tasted all year, and this is it. And if anything happens and anything comes out and there's, some proof of wrongdoing or something like that, then of course we'll talk about it here on the channel. I'm not an official critic, like I said, but this is a fantastic whiskey, and I think it outdoes the Double Oak for me, which, again, is an amazing pour in its own right and is topping other lists out there as well for top 5, top 10, etc. All right, so with that said, this has been revealed. The crux of the video is done, but the last thing that I want to do, you can see the other winners here on the table from your left to right, going 5, 4, 3, 2, with their kind of substitutions and caveat bottles and everything we've talked about in this series. What I want to do is just say one last thing, which is that, yes, there are a lot of single barrels on my list. And yes, there are 2 Bourbon Junkies picks, which is a Patreon/barrel club that I'm a part of. I'm friends with those guys, but at the end of the day, I'm supporting them as friends. I'm also picking up their barrel picks. I'm buying them. I'm not giving those for free by any means. And what I want to say is this. This is kind of proving what has been my theory for the last year or two in American whiskey as we've seen this bourbon boom happening. And that is that the most interesting bottles that are coming to market, yes, there are some great things, the Pappies, the BTACs, but you're never going to get them. I'm never going to get them. I live in a control state. It's not going to happen unless I pay thousands of dollars on secondary. And yes, we do get these occasional releases like Old Overholt 10-Year Rye, which I think is a really cool bottle, great distribution, great price, and it hits above its price point. But that's not the norm in the market anymore. And I think where this is going is single barrel picks. I've said this for a year or two. I have a lot of people around me that are saying the same things. That is, you should join a barrel club, whether it's a Patreon for a YouTuber or whether it's a local store you support in your state. Again, I don't get those here in Ohio. It's a control state, so we just have state picks, and I can't trust the palates picking those all the time. But if you have a palate you trust of a local store, of a YouTuber and a Patreon, whatever, those, for me, are the places to go over the next couple of years in the bourbon industry, American whiskey industry in general, because you might find some of your favorite whiskeys. I found 2 of mine, and it's not because the junkies are my friends. Truly, Virtue Rye 1 and this 13th Colony pick are top tier whiskeys that I've ever tasted in my life. And that's saying something. Now, do I buy other junkies picks and other picks from people that I support, like Matt Porter, ADHD Whiskey, that aren't necessarily my favorites that they've done? Yes. But there's also some picks that Matt and the junkies have done, which are the main 2 Patreons that I support and picks that I buy, that have been unbelievable. So I don't want to go on my soapbox anymore about this, but in my mind, the best deals, it is a crapshoot sometimes, but the best deals you're going to find where you really might get that special bottle are in some of these single barrel clubs. And I think that's what is making whiskey fun these days. It's what's building community around these clubs, around these stores, whatever the case may be. I'm here to say that I think you should firmly support single barrel clubs in whatever form they take. And the other thing about it is just that it's easier to kill those bottles off because you know you're never going to get another one. You're not going to go out searching for a backup. I can't crack my Weller 12 till I have a backup. You're never going to get a backup of some of these. And that's the fun. Drink it, enjoy it, kill the bottle with your friends, and wait on the next amazing whiskey experience that you're going to have in those single barrel clubs. That is going to do it, guys. Thank you for checking out this series. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And sorry to rant at you so much. Cheers. I got to get ready for a live stream tonight. I'll see you next time here on Drums and Drams.